Hello, I'm Michael Yurchak, actor and voice artist, best known for my role as Obito and Toby on Naruto Shippuden, and you're listening to Voicing Your Talent.
With me, Jacquelyn Liz.
And action.
Hi everyone, welcome to Voicing Your Talent with me, Jacquelyn Liz, where I will be interviewing the giants in this crazy industry we call voice acting. Get to know them a little more and their passion for the art of voice acting.
You have voiced some amazing animated characters such as Hawkeye from Sailor Moon, Trip from Pokémon, and Obito from the popular anime Naruto Shippuden. How did you start as a voiceover artist, and how did you know becoming a voice actor was the perfect job for you?
Well, that's a great question. I started doing voiceover after I was already doing a fair amount of on-camera work. I was making a living doing on-camera commercials, but I had always been interested in doing characters in sketch comedy and improv, and I kind of grew up doing accents and funny voices for friends and that kind of thing, and loved cartoons as a kid and would sort of mimic a bunch of stuff. And so when I started in the industry, I sort of was naturally curious about doing voiceover, and I asked my agents about how I might make that transition or add it to my bag of tricks, and they suggested that I take a class. They said, it's its own art form, so it's going to require a little bit of training, but you seem to have the skills to probably get going with it if that's the way you want to go. So I took a class with a woman named Carol Kimball, who's a voice casting agent out here in Los Angeles. And I worked hard, and she seemed to like what I was doing, and I turned to her for some advice at the end, and she said, you know what, I think you've got something here that's worth sharing. So she put me in touch with an agency that specialized in voiceover, and I signed with them right away. And then, believe it or not, my very first big audition was as the spokesperson, or like the voice of KBToys.com. KB Toys used to be a big national toy store, and they were starting an online presence, and this was in the late 90s, so that was kind of a big thing. I booked this giant campaign and kind of never looked back. It felt great, and right away I started doing a lot more stuff. The industry was smaller then. The voiceover industry was smaller then. So I was lucky enough to catch a lot of momentum and book a lot of jobs commercially, and then I started doing some animation and video games, and it just felt great. I loved it. I love feeling in the booth to this day. I just stepped out of the booth. I'm coming off of a recording session for an anime show that I started doing just today. Today was the first session on it. And it is, it's the perfect job for me because I leap out of bed and race to the studio when I've got gigs. And so I know I must be doing something right.
Even I still think that's really cool. Successful voiceover actor. What qualities make someone a successful voiceover artist?
Well, the cool thing really about today is, so voice acting is split into categories, and, everybody who does voiceover, for the most part, does commercials. So, in other words, almost no one gets away with just doing animation. Celebrities are people who are not doing it for money, or people actually who get lucky enough to get onto a gigantic show and then choose not to do commercials anymore. Probably don't. But for the most part, the sort of work-a-day actors, which I am definitely one of, do a little bit of anything that comes their way. And the biggest bucket of work happens to be commercials, sometimes narration as well. And the good news about that, for anybody thinking about getting into it, is that casting now is, sort of reflects the diverse population of this country and of, the world. And so just about every voice has a place on television. Now, whether or not you end up being able to generate enough relationships and ongoing gigs and, if you have the patience and or the, and of course the talent is a different question. But in terms of, there is no longer kind of a cookie cutter, out of the box, perfect voice for voiceover. not everybody has to sound like James Earl Jones anymore. Not everybody has to have a big, deep, booming baritone voice or a sexy bedroom voice. I am not a typical voice actor. I'm not a typical voice, and I'm doing okay. So, I think anyone can do it. But what makes a good voiceover read is really having a clear point of view on how you're going to tell the story, whether it's the story being told with a short script like a commercial or a longer script like a narration piece or, a character-driven script like you'd find in animation or video games. You got to know why you're saying what you're saying, and you have to know what the meaning of this thing is and have a purpose behind it. And when you've got that kind of information in your holster, it's a little easier to get it out there and have it make sense. So that, to me, that's what makes a great read. Is I guess that comes down to some sense of finding some kind of truth behind the thing you're doing, even if what you're saying is meant for laughs. Finding a reason to speak those lines that usually is hidden in the point of view of the character.
What is the process of voicing a character from creating a voice to recording it?
Well, so that, we're kind of already touching on it, right? For me, the first thing, when we're talking about animated characters, the first thing I usually do, I look for two things right away. One is, what is the type of character this creature or person is? In other words, what's the role they play in the overarching story? And you might call that an archetype, that whatever you call it, I want to know what the job of this character is. Is it to provide comic relief in a lighthearted way? Is it to, provide a stumbling block for the protagonist? Is it to darken the mood? Is it to support the protagonist in some way, or is it the protagonist himself? I got to know what the role of the character is. And then once I've got that, I have I and everybody else has a whole sort of catalog of information based on a lifetime of data collecting, which just means that from the time I was a child, I've been read to, and I've seen movies and plays and read books myself, and seen cartoons and television shows and played video games and read comic books and so on. And so I know an awful lot about character types. So once I have a type that I kind of recognize, my brain starts firing ideas at me. And then from there, I look at the specific project, of course, and figure out what's actually happening in the story. What are the relationships I have? How do I feel about my own place in the world? And I start to develop the point of view of the character, the POV of the character. And from there, usually somewhere in that process of recognizing the type, hopefully you get a look at some artwork maybe, developing the point of view for myself, a voice starts to emerge, and I start to hear it. And then I start to try that on a couple of lines and play with it and fiddle with it and adjust it in terms of pitch and texture and pace and cadence and placement and all these different things that I might use to kind of find the sound I want. And then from there, I try it. I try it out. I work it a few different times. I'll do a pass of the whole piece, listen back to it, think about whether or not it's working, and then from there, just kind of lay it down and go for it. Sometimes it has to happen a little quicker than that. Just a quick example. I just came out of a session where I was voicing. This is a studio that I've done an awful lot of work for. They brought me in without auditioning, and I did a role of a straight kind of young hero-ish character. He's not the hero, but he's sort of like a beleaguered young tough guy. And I went in and did him. That's pretty close to just my own voice, but my own voice in trying circumstances like having an incurable disease and trying to get through the desert while creatures are trying to eat me. So it's like that puts you in a different frame of mind, but it's still me, but it's me inside these imaginary circumstances. And that's the other thing, is getting a hold of the ability to suspend your own disbelief, buy into the world of the show, and really commit to that. So that was that, but then at the end of the session, we finished a little early, and so we, as often happens, they went back into other episodes and were just looking for smaller characters they could drop me into. There was this kind of goat man character that was jovial and boisterous. I could see from the artwork, but they didn't have a voice on him, and so they were just like, "You got something for this guy?" And I don't know, there was something about him. He had a big laugh. Like I could see that he was doing a big laugh. They showed me a clip, and so I just sort of started playing with it. Hey, cut it up like this. Well, couple of sour visitors, eh? So I kind of just did that riffing in the booth by myself, and the director just clicked in and said, "It's great, I love it, let's do it." And so we did it. Those happened much faster. It was like 3 lines, and then I was done. So it wasn't like I was developing a big character arc for this guy. But still, that's kind of, it was kind of based on the look, based on the fact that he had a big laugh. That reminded me of something else that, a laugh I've heard before in my life. I can't quite tell you where or when. And I trusted myself to go try something. Hear something, try something, commit in a committed way, 100%. And that at least gives the director something that they can hear, as opposed to, well, I'm not sure, and kind of being sheepish about it, no pun intended. But, if you are a little bit nervous about it, you tend not to go all the way. The people who are listening that are making the decision can't hear the voice you actually have in your mind. And so that's something I learned early on. The voice in my mind could be clear, but if I don't make it clear to the people that are listening, you don't get the jobs. That's kind of the thing is, I make a clear choice, I commit to it 100%, and then I try to make sure that I'm consistent with that voice from the beginning of the script or the read to the very end of the read. And I put it out there with pride and as an offering and see what people think, and if they like it, great, and if they don't, I don't take it personally, and I try something different, If I were a musician and somebody said, hey, I like what you're doing, but I'd rather hear it in the tone of A, in the key of A, I'm not going to get offended that you don't like the key of C. I'm just going to change the tone, change the key, and try it a different way. And that works really well for me. So because it protects me a little bit, too. I don't get sad about, being asked to change something. I've got to believe, at least in that moment, I'm good enough at this that I'm sitting in the booth right now. And so they're asking me for something, I'm trying it. If they don't like it, I'll try something different, and we'll figure it out together. It's a collaboration. And when you see yourself that way as a collaborative artist, it's a game changer. You're not just thankful for having the job. I am thankful for having the job, but you can't only be thankful for having the job, because that puts you in a low status position, which is not great for confidence.
I completely agree. I remember when I first came to you for voiceover, I started as the British lady. You're like, no, you need to do stuff that is you need stuff with your normal voice in the anime character world.
But but the thing is that I hope that my message for you is always, it's great that you can do that. That's amazing. And just remember that it's just a choice. It's one choice, but you have the skill and the technique and the creativity to make other choices too. So if that's the choice you end up wanting to make, that's great. Any choice anybody makes, it's a choice, excellent. If it's a default, less excellent. Because then it becomes, if it's just a thing that we go to, and listen, we all have our safety zones. Everybody's got their safety thing that they do. You've heard me, I often will go, hey, oh gosh, this is just my little weasel guy. I'll often go to that. But if I go to that every time, am I really making the choice that's best for the show, or am I making the choice that feels most comfortable coming out of me? And there's a little bit of both that are kind of necessary. You got to kind of make sure that you feel good about the voice you're sharing, but also be sure that it fits the project you're working on.
I completely agree. And some of the stuff, like when I'm recording or doing like an audition or something, I always hear my mom, remember what Michael told you? I'm like, I know.
Maybe you should tell the listeners that so we had a long run as teacher students, and now you have come so far that you have your own show. You're doing all kinds of work. I'm just thrilled for you, and so happy to be back and chatting with you about this stuff.
Well, thank you. To voice a fictitious character for the animated screen is a difficult challenge. What is your method of handling a voice to these characters And do directors guide you on how they want the character to sound, or do you usually get the full creative reign?
So I think I've already started touching on this, which is, I do look for the job I'm supposed to be doing. And then from there, I want to work on the point of view of the character, and then I start to, create. If it's happening in real time, then yes, the director is kind of in on it directly and is right there with me, and I'll throw out a couple of things kind of, as ideas, and they'll listen and, I like this, and yes, keep going in that direction kind of thing. Or if it's in the audition phase, as you know, often the specs or the description of the character will have an awful lot, sort of a paragraph or so as a description of who the character is, what their role is in the world they're living in, and so on. Maybe you get a little bit of artwork that kind of is a suggestion of body type and style of the show. And from there, I'll start working. Usually when you submit an audition, in the case of animation, you are either cast right away, and so in that case, you do have reign, at least as far as the audition goes, or you're asked to do a callback. And then there's a third thing, which is they'll ask for a redirect, and that is basically, I like what you're doing here, but could you add this, that, or the other thing, and you do another round of auditioning, and then, either get the job or don't. Then when you get the gig, you go in, and when you are if depending on the show, maybe there's a table read, or maybe you go in, and the first little bit of the session, of your first session, you spend kind of dialing in the voice and collecting a little bit of tape on it so that you can use it as reference going forward. So there is a collaborative nature to it. Obviously, you're the one in the driver's seat because you're the one who's kind of making the sound. But you're getting feedback all the way along from the powers that be, tell you, like, yes, I like this, keep going in that direction, or, ease back on it a little bit, make him a little older, make him a little younger. Could he have a little bit, more gravitas, or, maybe he's a little heavier, or, he's a little more nebbishy, or whatever. So it's, kind of like dialing in adjusting the different dials, I guess I should say, to kind of really try to hone in on exactly who and what the character voice is going to sound like. Then once you've got something, you do like a little bit of a longer passage to kind of set it in your own body and your own voice, and also to get some on tape so that you can then refer back to it. Because what will happen is I'll do an episode, like today I did this episode. I probably won't go back. I know I'm in at least one more episode, and it could be up to 8 more episodes. They're not even sure yet because they get the tape from, or they get the work from other stuff. This is an anime show, so stuff is coming back and forth from Japan. So when they get the stuff, it could be next week or it could be next month. And, I had been doing Naruto for 5 years before I ever even saw an episode of it, so it's the kind of thing where there can be months between sessions, and then when you go back in, hopefully you've done some other work since then, so they play it for you and refresh your memory. And matching your own voice tends to be fairly easy. At least for me, I can hear myself, and the minute I hear it, I got it. That's something that I can easily drop into because I recognize what I'm doing because it's me.
As my mother says, and as I say, the great one.
That's right. I accept.
You have also voiced many video games such as Grand Theft Auto, Naruto Shippuden, Sonic Free Riders, Skylanders, Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games. What are the steps to voicing a video game, and are there any differences from voicing an animated character?
So voicing video games, it is a little bit different. The main reason why it's different is because you're not as privy to the storyline of what's happening. You can get sort of the broad scope, but the scripts are not constructed in kind of a typical format. So very often it's just like a spreadsheet with just several lines of yours and maybe a brief description of exactly what's happening in that moment, and a brief, 1 or 2 word description or direction for the voice actor. And you just go through and you record your line like, get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. Like you just give 3 takes in a row. If they like them, If they're sure they've got one of what they need, you move on. And then you kind of bang out. You can do up to, a couple thousand lines or maybe 800 lines or something like that. And it could be just that. If it weren't so fun, it would be, you'd think it was monotonous. But it's not. It's like, it's fun and it's cool. It feels sometimes like you wish you could have a little bit more interaction with the story, because sometimes in isolation these things feel like maybe they're less grand. But video games also tend to be slightly less cartoony anyway. They're a little more low-key, the most of the voices in these things. So there's that. So the performance actually, they like it a little bit less, a little more muted, I guess. And the big difference, though, too, is that video game work can be a little stressful, or it can cause a little strain on your voice, because there are often action sounds, which and reacts, they're called, which can require some yelling and screaming and fighting and oohing and ahhing and that kind of thing. And you have to be careful as a voice actor to speak with some support from your lower belly and make sure that you try to keep out of your throat as much as possible and do those screams and yells and reacts in a way that doesn't put a lot of strain on your throat, so that you don't, lose your voice, because chances are you've got to work again the next day, or at least audition so you can work maybe the next week. So those are the big differences. You're always alone doing video games. A lot of times doing animation you're alone also, but occasionally you work on a show where you've got the whole cast in the booth together, and those are really, really fun. That's a great fun thing to do.
I would love to do. Well, I actually have done a video game, the Princess Maya, for a VR video game.
Hooray!
Yeah. So I was a ghost girl who didn't know she died.
I love that. That's perfect.
Yeah. Is it better to have a wide range of voices, or just specialize in one particular style? Which makes me wonder, how does one come up with a catalog of different voices?
Well, that's a good question. The thing is, I think that we are all pretty versatile. I think that everybody uses different voices all the time. The way you talk to me is probably different than the way you talk to your mom, is different than the way you talk to the director, is different than the way you talk to a cop if he pulled you over, is different than the way you talk to a child if you were addressing him or her. So we all use different voices. So what's most important is that you really understand the character you're playing. In terms of doing that big trick voices, or big kind of voices that are very different from your own, it's not that it is necessary, because I think there are some people, very talented actors, who play the protagonist, play the hero girl or hero boy in lots and lots of different shows. There are some people who just sound like, God, that's the perfect leading character voice. And it is a character voice. Do they also do lots and lots of other characters? Maybe yes and maybe no. Usually people are called on to do something else once they're in the booth. But, those people may not be the kinds of people you think of as having 1,000 voices kind of thing. I don't know. I hate to talk about myself that way, but I have always enjoyed doing a range of things, and that is what has worked best for me. At the end of the day, we all want to be working. So I think the main thing is get really good at everything you're doing, and the way to do that is practice it every single day. Practice your own voice. Practice acting. Practice doing other voices. Make sure that, do some singing. Do some work that stretches you in different directions. But I think that developing the instrument, as cheesy as that may sound, developing the instrument and getting as flexible and fluent with it as possible sets you up for success. It puts you in the best position to kind of put yourself in front of other people that are going to give you some opportunities. So I don't think you have to have a million different voices, but it is the kind of thing that I think, you want to start to put yourself, start first, it helps to think of different situations instead. This is a tense situation. This is a happy situation. This is a life or death situation. This is a sad situation, etc. And listen to what's happening. How do I speak in those different moments? and what's going on with my voice when I do that. Where's it coming from in my body, and what is my breath doing when that happens, and so on. That's a good way to get started, and list them. Remember, you and I we create like a living document, and you just list some stuff with a basic description next to it. This is a nasal voice that comes from the front of my face, a slightly higher pitched, a little bit nervous and stuttery, and I just do the best I can, or whatever, like that kind of short description. Maybe I name the character if that serves as a reminder, or if it's inspired by a person or a creature that I've seen before on television or movies or what have you. I may say a la, whomever, and kind of go from there. So yeah, it's an ongoing process, and it should be, because it's, we're artists, so we do it from, once you start doing it, you want to keep doing it, so you keep on developing and working on stuff.
That's exactly how I feel. That's how I want to become the voiceover. What is your secret to creating such lovable and memorable characters?
Well, there's no secret. I wish there were. I wish there were a trick. Lovable is such a sweet thing to say. Listen, I try to bring some authenticity and some heart to any character that I'm playing. I don't want the characters to be two-dimensional. I don't want it to just be sort of a sketch. To me, it's important that I understand what's happening in the character's mind. How do they see the moment? How do they understand the relationship with the person they're interacting with? And what do they stand to lose if this goes wrong, And from there, and that's including if it's a comedic moment, I like bringing the heart. And I think that is what, if the characters, resonate, I hope it's partly to do with that. At the end of the day, of course, I serve at the pleasure of the director and the creators of the show. So it's like I'm trying to do right by the story I'm telling. And that's my job, is that I'm there to facilitate the telling of story in the best way I possibly can. And my part of it is usually a single character or, several characters, but each one is its own individual self. And so I'm trying to tell that character's truth as well as I can do it.
Even I do that, there's descriptions of, when in auditions, I would think to it, and I would think of the voice. I'm like, okay, that voice goes with that one, and then this one goes with that one, and then they'll tell the story, and I'm like, yeah, that voice matches with that one, because you trained me on how to do that, so now I know.
Hooray.
Of all the characters you have voiced, which one was your personal favorite, and which one was the most difficult to voice?
I have to say that Obito has got to probably be my favorite. Probably because I didn't realize. So the story with that show is that I played Toby for years without knowing at all how popular the show was. And Toby is this kind of high-pitched, clownish character who has a mask on. And for several seasons, he is just kind of like a goofball character that pops in and out of episodes and seems kind of insignificant, or at least he's just like one of like a group of jackals that kind of pop in and out and cause trouble. And I was having fun doing him, but I felt like this is just an awesome opportunity for the job was great. I was grateful for it, but I didn't know where to watch the show. I had no idea that the show was popular. I didn't know that the show was doing well or not doing well, and I went to pick my little boy up at a play date, and I walked into the other kid's bedroom, and this kid had a shrine to Naruto, and in the shrine was a stuffed, or like an action figure of my character. And I said, hey, I play the voice of that guy. And this kid couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe it. I had no idea that anyone would ever have seen the show, let alone have action figures and so on. That same year, somebody came to my house dressed as my character for Halloween. And it was like, okay, obviously something's going on here that I don't know about. And that was so exciting and fun. But also, just as I was coming to realize that this was a popular show, my character Toby, I was told, was going to be phased out. So I knew that my role was coming to an end, and that the character was going to change. And I hate to give a spoiler, but Toby becomes Obito. He removes his mask, and the final season shot a long time ago, so I assume that anybody who hasn't seen it yet won't be too offended by the spoiler. But the Toby removes his mask at some point, and we discover that he is, and always has been, Obito, who is a much fiercer, deeper-pitched character. And so Toby was always up here like this, and was sort of like, shy and meek. And Obito is down here like this, and it's just kind of a much bigger character. And when they told me this, I said, well, who's going to do Obito? And they said, well, we're going to get somebody who can do the deeper voice. And no kidding around, in my last session of Toby, I think the guy that they were going to hire to do Obito couldn't make it or had to cancel or whatever, and they needed to get a line. And there was one line that was the spoiler that was like the tip-off. And they said, you want to try it? And I said, yeah, so I did one, and they liked it, and they ended up using me. Now, I don't celebrate taking the job from the other person. I don't know how deeply into it they had gotten or whatever, but it was an unexpected thing. And then I was on the show for another, 5 seasons, which is, that's a long time, and that show I did on and off for about 7 years, that's the longest thing I've ever done, and was really fun, and it was a great learning experience, and just a lot of fun. So that probably goes down as my favorite one. I've played some difficult characters, like the video game characters jump out at me. I once played a gigantic hell beast that required me to make this huge sound, which again, the funny thing is when I get in a booth, I'm so happy and excited to be in there that I riff a lot. Like I play around a lot. And there was a character on the thing that like I could see him, and I made a big noise, like made like some kind of a big nasty monster noise, and they were like, "Oh my God, that's perfect! Can you do that? Can you keep doing that?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I can." I proceeded to do it for a full session, and by the end of it, my throat was pretty toasted, but it was still a lot of fun. The difficult ones tend to be more about, like, can you deliver the sound and do it in a healthy way? That makes it hard, is like, can you do it in a way that makes it so that you can keep doing it? And that, I've had a couple of runs of stuff that have been trickier than others.
Yeah, I saw that episode of just you talking about that episode, I started bawling my eyes.
In Obito or in Naruto?
Yeah, Naruto.
Yeah, that one. That's right. The thing is, Obito just is, he suffers this terrible loss as a young man, and it forces him to go into hiding, and everybody thinks he's dead, but really he's like biding his time. And that show is really deep and beautiful and weird and cool, and that's the other thing. I just love it. It's so strange to me how deep they get with it.
Oh, it's really deep. Really deep. You received a doctorate in educational theater from NYU and offer classes to up-and-coming voice actors. Please share the experience of what you do and offer during your sessions.
Well, teaching has become a real part of what I do. I started teaching a long time ago when I went back to graduate school the first time, and I was just part of the program. And I discovered that I really love it. And I love it not only because I like working with other people, but also because the task of articulating what I do as an artist and why I felt was not only useful for other people, I discovered it was useful for other people, but it was also really useful for me. Talking about what's happening, how I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm doing those things, where on the vocal track my voice is coming from, and the different choices that I'm making as an actor, and how they influence the product that ends up being what I offer, is a useful thing for me because it streamlines it. I found that it streamlined my process. It helped me get to where I needed to go quicker and in a more efficient way. And then that made me want to share that with students, and sharing it with students made me want to do it more myself, and back and forth and back and forth. So it became this kind of nice symbiotic relationship. And basically that's what I do. I share my own process. I've studied a lot about the voice in particular, and sort of the anatomical parts of the vocal tract and the body, and different breathing and vocal techniques. I'm a certified teacher of a particular technique called the Fitzmaurice voice work technique, which is not specifically for voiceover, but it's more of a theatrical voice technique used in different colleges and universities and conservatory programs around the world. And so I teach that, and then as far as voiceover work goes, there's some basic nuts and bolts as to, how do you pick up a script and get started with it? What are the first steps you make to trying to speak truthfully into the microphone? And how do you find your own authentic delivery without putting something on? I think starting at a place of honesty, again, is a good place to start before layering on other stuff, whether it's for cartoons or even more so for commercials. People, I think, when they get in front of a mic, everybody thinks they've got to sound like a voiceover actor. It's like, that's not, if that's how you sound, great. But when it isn't, don't force it. Be yourself. Just to go back to your first question or your second question, there is room in this industry for everybody. And so most of the people that get to do the work are proud of who they are and have discovered a reason for sharing that.
I feel the exact same way. That's why I became a voice actor.
Hooray!
Obviously, it's not easy to get your foot in the door in becoming a successful voice actor. What advice do you have for those who want to become a voiceover artist?
My advice is to practice, is to get going with it, to start developing the tools you'll need as an artist, and those include really getting comfortable with what it feels like to put stuff out there, to speak clearly and confidently and offer things with clarity, offer your read with clarity. I do suggest some training depending on what your past and current experience is as a performer. Even trained actors need a little bit of something, a little practice doing voiceover before they get going, because it's a kind of a specific thing to sit in front of a microphone. The levels of projection and the levels of the nuances of performance are slightly different in the booth than they are during live performance or on camera or theater style performances. So there's a little bit to do there, but wherever you are in terms of your experience, I think at least having some time with a professional who can kind of show you the ins and outs of what it's like to just get there, and then practicing, respect the craft, respect the profession. An example I often use is that no one would ever, love orchestral music, buy themselves a violin, take a couple of lessons, and then move across the country and knock on the front door of the Los Angeles or New York Philharmonic and ask if they could have an audition and expect really to get in, But people do that all the time with voiceovers. I've always wanted to do voiceover, and I took 1 or 2 lessons in college or wherever else, and I think I'm okay at it. And so I'm going to try to do it for a living without really practicing much. I don't want to stomp on anyone's dreams. That dream can be there for sure at any level, but it requires practice, just like musicians practice every day, just like athletes practice every day. Professional actors, and particularly professional voice people, work on their voices and work on their skills, their craft, every single day, hours a day. So it's not sort of like an isolated thing where you just kind of, I do it when I get the work and then I don't do it for months at a time, or I do it when I get the audition and then I don't do it in between then. You got to do it all the time. You got to always be working. You got to always be trying stuff, playing with stuff. And it becomes just a part of your day. But that's important, I think, is that folks need to recognize that there's a lot of people that want to do it. And there are a lot of people with a lot of time on their hands, frankly. And those people are devoting that time to the craft. So if you're not putting the time in, even if you're super skilled, even if you just have a lot of raw talent, ultimately, you know, you got to practice. You got to want it. And my experience is that when you do that, when you then get the opportunity to work, you're ready. My biggest fear as a professional is, you know, getting into a professional situation, being asked to do something and not being able to do it. You know, that has always been a phobia of mine. And so I just always make sure that I'm capable. And I think that that comes from training, and it comes from practice, and that training and practice builds confidence, and then confidence puts you into a session in a frame of mind that sets you up for success. So that's kind of my big advice is take your classes, do your homework, practice, practice, practice. Have fun. Let the process be satisfying to you. If you love the process of what you're doing, the practice itself should be fine, should be great and rewarding and artistically enriching and so on. And then when you get the gigs, that's gravy. All that'll be great too. And making some money, that'll be great too. But you got to love the craft. You got to love the process in order to get to the point where you're putting out product.
Hence why I had you as a mentor.
Yes, you did.
I have had the pleasure of voicing several characters for an up-and-coming episode of Theme Parkology's Dark Park. You, as well, brilliantly played the role of Leo.
Oh, wow. I've never seen virtual reality as good as this. This is so detailed. Look at the swamp, the trees, and that boat dock over there. What does that hanging sign say? T-E-I-Tixa. Crap, it's backwards. What is it, Tixa?
Who cares? Look at that old abandoned house on that hill. Nice.
Yeah, nice and creepy. Hashtag give me the creeps. Guys? Turn around. There's like a whole mess of zombies right there.
What are other projects you are working on?
Well, I just finished, I think I can say this, a couple things. So literally I just started recording this new anime show that I can't tell you about right now. I can't give you the name of just yet, but that's happening at the moment. I finished doing a video game called World of Warcraft, which is this really popular series of games, and they're introducing a new line of these bot characters, and I'm the voice of the main guy, the main bot, and these guys are these cute little creatures that kind of tinker around with everything and cause trouble and do what they do, and that was really fun because that franchise is big and is one that I know people who love the game, and so that was kind of a fun thing to be a part of. I also did a Christmas movie last year called The Christmas Chronicles, where I played a little elf, which was super fun. His name was Bjork, and for that show, the movie, we had to learn a separate language that was developed by the guy that created the language or the languages for Game of Thrones. And that was a really, really fun character to do because it would be a really fun project to take on. Also, among other things, it recorded on the Disney lot, and that was kind of a thrill to get to go into Disney and record there. That was really cool. And I did a series last year called Ultraman, which is on Netflix now, and that was also fun. I did 8 episodes of that. And I've been doing some live work too, or some on-camera work too. I've got a recurring role on a TV show called Tacoma FD. Season 2 premieres in March, and got a couple episodes coming up this season, and did one last season as well. And I just finished a play also, so I'm covering it on all bases right now, to voiceover and theater and movies and television, just making a living. I'm hustling out there, Jacquelyn.
As you being my mentor and voice coach, do you have any questions for me as an up-and-coming voiceover artist?
Yeah, well, I would love to know, what does your daily routine look like right now? What does the day in the life of an up-and-coming voice artist look like in terms of your artistic practice?
Well, actually, new voices have come in for me. Like, I've created a voice that I can do a British child now. And
I like that.
I've actually did I don't know how many days it was ago, but I did a meerkat.
Hooray!
into a Australian thing. Voices.com actually was where it came from. And I got a meerkat role for that one. So that was pretty cool, all the way from Australia. And yeah, it's just wake up. If the invitations come in or they want custom demos, I have to do them. And my mom goes, you have to do them, because she's my audio technician. But yeah, it's just been like, I am Captain Elsie for Boston Whaler as well. That's a big one. Video games. I'm in was in a children's audiobook. I did voices for them in, I think it was either China or Korea, I can't remember, but it was Red Fox. So I did a lot. I did a bunny, 2 bunnies, and a mermaid voice for them. And, of course, the park for theme parkology. But that's what I've done.
I forgot to say that also. Yeah, the dark park. I can't wait for that to continue. That should be a neat thing for people to see and check out.
And my dad has actually joined in on it, too, like voiceover, some semi-voiceover world because of me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's apparently, as Gary puts it, he's Harvey the Hippo in some of the episodes he's going to be in.
Amazing. That's so cool.
So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And in closing, tell us, Michael, where can listeners find your website or you on social media?
Well, my website is michaelyurchak.com, MichaelYurchak.com. Twitter is Michael Mychak, MichaelMychak. And Instagram is Michael Yurchak, all one word, MichaelYurchak. Hit me up on Instagram and Twitter. I'm an old guy and have just really kind of dipped my toe into the Insta universe and the Twitterverse, and I am not great about it, but I promise I'm trying to be better about posting stuff and not being so bashful about it, and it would help me if I knew I had some followers. So if you're interested, hit me up. I'll follow you back, I promise, but I gotta generate some hits. So yeah, those things. But in my website, though, is michaelyurchak.com, and it's got a bunch of information on there as well.
I do thank you for coming on to my show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It really is such a pleasure to chat with you and to see how well you're doing. And, you know, it's absolutely my honor to share a little bit of the work that I've been lucky enough to do, too. But mostly I'm just happy to support you in your work. So thanks for having me, and I will see you again soon, I hope.
Cut. That's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Voicing Your Talent with Jacquelyn Liz. Voicing Your Talent is part of the Theme Parkology Network. Interviews were arranged by and for Theme Parkology. Voicing Your Talent is strictly a fan publication. Please visit us at themeparkology.com for more information. Follow Jacquelyn Liz on Facebook.com/blessedwithavoice and Instagram.com/voicingyourtalent. All character voices, trademarks, product names, company names, and logos mentioned are the property of their respective owners. All opinions stated within do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Theme Parkology or any other production company. Don't forget to subscribe to Voicing Your Talent on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. By subscribing, you'll get a notification as soon as our latest episode drops. While you're at it, please rate us with a 5-star review. This will help other fans find our show. Just like Jacquelyn says, we are all blessed with a voice.